Hi everyone, today the topic that I choose to talk about is the authoritarian government of Francisco Franco in Spain. So first of all, I want to give you a little background so that you know what was going on. After the Second Republic was created in 1931, the government modernized the country, Spain. So the country was drastically divided into two groups: the Republicans, that were workers, and liberals that really wanted new rules and they wanted to make like a lot of social reforms. And there was also the nationalists, conservatives, and they didn't want any change to be done. They just wanted traditionally how everything worked, like the powers and the laws. And of course they were angry about all the changes that the Second Republic did. The Spanish Civil War started in 1936 when a group of military led by Francisco Franco wanted to overthrow the government. Francisco Franco had a lot of support, mainly from the Nazi German government. Many people died, but at the end, the Civil War ended and Franco won at 1939. He proclaimed himself head of state and of government under the name of El Caudillo. Franco's regime committed a lot of violent human rights abuses against the Spanish people. For example, the establishment of concentration camps and the use of forced labor and executions. They caused approximately 200,000 to 400,000 deaths in more than 190 concentration camps. So now that we have a little background knowledge, let's start talking about some important points. The first one will be how the government maintained power. So as I already mentioned, Franco gained power by proclaiming himself head of state and of government. In addition to that, in 1937, Franco declared the unification of parties, meaning that there was only one legal party left, that was the Falange. The first decade of Franco's government was a little harsh in many ways. For example, the economy was struggling because of all that happened during the Civil War. Franco made wrong decisions, like going with an autarky system, which basically is a self-sufficient system, meaning that they were practically isolated from the rest of the world. The national income dropped, and industrial and agriculture production stagned, and the wages fell sharply. Another important point is the relationship between internal powers. We're talking about church, monarchy, and army. For Franco, one of the most important was church, because it was already decided that they controlled education. If we talk about propaganda and opinions, Franco was very authority in that way. With help of his brother-in-law, Ramon Serrano, that at that time he was the National Minister of the Interior, they created the Ley Prensa. And this law remained in effect for nearly 30 years, and it served as a political propaganda. They censor four main criteria: political opinions, sexual morality, religion, and language. No writer was allowed to criticize the Francoism or say anything against the Catholic Church. Anything that was a taboo theme or something indecent was completely prohibited. Of course, this way Franco was able to control the information that they could share, and basically he controlled the truth. This is clearly something that still happens today. Many leaders of many countries still control the information that can be shared. They choose what is good for them, which is the information that help them, even if that means not giving accurate information to their citizens. Now, let's talk about another important point. citizens. What options did they get, what consequences they got, and how they were affected. So as I already talked a little bit in my last newspaper assignment, people didn't really have options. Since the beginning of the Civil War, Franco had a very supported and powerful group, so it was very difficult for the other party, the Republicans, to fight against him. The ones that didn't join him or support him were killed. When the Civil War ended, Republicans kind of escaped and started occupying different territories, but quickly the repression started in the Judea region. For example, it is documented that many people were executed simply because they thought or they had like a suspicion that they were supporters of the Republicans. There was also confiscation and economic repression. People that supported Republican ideas suffer from confiscation of their property. For women, the government, with the help of the Catholic Church, created something named the National Catholic Ideology. Basically, any woman that was part of the Republican Party suffered public humiliation. Some of them were shaved and served as exhibitions. Some others were forced to serve in military houses, and some of them even got imprisoned. With all this information, there are many things we can discuss. Let's start with the ethical part. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that tries to talk about good and evil and how we should act. Moral relativism tells us that good and evil does not exist universally. There's just kind of a social or cultural construct. So if we think like this, then everyone had their reasons. Franco did what he did because he thought that was the good way, that was the correct way. All his actions were motivated because he thought that in that way he could accomplish what was best for his country. And of course, the other part, the Republicans, also thought that changing things and creating new laws and making all these new things were gonna be helpful to create a better or the best for them and for the country. But there is another philosophical school of thought, the moral realism. And this says the complete opposite. Universal moral values do exist, like justice or compassion. And the only thing is that different cultures can interpret these values differently. So if we think this way, then maybe Franco's thinking was not necessarily bad. Like what he wanted to accomplish at the end may not be bad, but the way he shared his ideas and the way he wanted to accomplish, then there were bad actions, suppressing people, taking stuff from them just because they didn't think the way he wanted them to think. All of that actions, killing people. Well, of course, we see that like something wrong, like there's not justice in any of that, and of course there was no compassion in any of his actions. And last but not least, we can discuss about what we can learn about the situation and how can we relate it to an actual scenario. After Franco's death in 1975, Spain rebuilt its democracy, and it is a great example that democracy isn't automatic. It depends on free information and active citizens. Spain's democracy succeeded thanks to citizens and reformers that chose dialogue instead of revenge. It shows the importance of respecting different voices to build a freer and a fairer society.